Hello, welcome to Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. I'm your host, Tabitha Ziegler.
And we're back, talking about all things autism.
All of the things.
Yes.
So I know we were talking about kind of the idea of consent. We're talking about genetic testing and that kind of thing. It was something that's near and dear to my heart because of my son. And so with that knowledge, we were equipped with some really wonderful resources and some testing that's actually turned out to be, fruitful, for lack of a better term. Now, what is happening in the current status of the fact that we even have to question this, right? The fact that we even have to go, wow, I did this wonderful thing for my child and got more knowledge. But now I don't know because now it's in hands and I don't know if those hands are going to, keep it safe.
Yeah.
That is hugely problematic. And honestly, since RFK and since he's been in the spotlight with his opinions and his ramblings, if you will, I was immediately, quite frankly, appalled by what he had to say. I was, to be honest, my friends and I have joked like, oh, well, my kid's never gonna play baseball, I guess. My kid's never gonna pay taxes, I guess. I don't care. Those aren't the things that, so there was that part of it. Right here, right now is the first time as a mom I've considered the genetic testing and all that information being a piece of that and how that fits together in that. Because still, well, oh my gosh, I just don't know. Here's what I think. I still would have done the genetic testing for several reasons. The number one reason being finding the information on my son. The second reason being, somewhere in my heart of hearts, I believe I need to believe that if something got to the point where that information was going to be used for just nefarious purposes and classification and God knows what else, I would really like to hope and believe that we could stop it, derail it, shift it. And maybe I need to believe that. Maybe that's true. But I think there is so much valuable knowledge in genetics. I mean, so much. Not just for autism or... It's crazy. And we're gaining all this technology that's allowing us to learn these things. And I have to believe that while I don't trust RFK, I don't trust what he's doing, I don't trust what he's saying. That's, I guess, maybe a bold thing to state, but it's just true. I don't feel comforted by his position in this community. But I think the good still outweighs the bad in an overarching, in the name of science, name of education, name of growing and learning. I guess that's that's where I land on that.
Okay.
Yeah. My thoughts are jumbled now in my brain.
That's all right. I'm giving you the space to really feel it out because I feel like you got a lot going on in there.
Yeah, I do. I really do. And you brought up all this stuff, and it's really, really interesting because a lot of it, it's not as if I haven't thought of it. I haven't thought of it in this way. And as we all know, when we humanize something, it feels different. And so now I'm not thinking of it just as an advocate, even just as an autism mom. I'm thinking of it as my son, Corbin. What could happen, to my son. Also, a lot of people seem to not be concerned with how involved the government is in all medical decisions. And that, to me, is a huge problem. And I think, why are we even talking about this? Just do HIPAA laws not apply here? How does that work? Oh, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. It'll come back.
Yeah. So I know where I was going with that. And ABA, we haven't even touched on ABA. And everyone has differing opinions. Trust me, I have a lot of opinions. doesn't matter. I don't think any government official has the right to make a medical decision from a child under any circumstances. So it's not as if I don't want the information or that I'm scared in that regard. I just have trouble trusting the end goal, because I could believe that a doctor wants something for research for the greater good. I have trouble believing that for a politician, across the board. And then there are other, I'm speaking on this and it's something I don't really know a ton about, but from what I understand, most countries are not not so heavily reliant on government to make impact in the medical world. And I don't think it's served us well. That's I think that's where I land with all that.
No, I think that's a lot. I know, look, I'm asking hard questions on purpose. Because these are the type of questions that we have in the community, and if we're not having these conversations, how are we going to land on an answer? And I think it's equally impactful that the politicians need to have their feet held to the fire. It's like, you can't have it both ways. Like, you can't come into people's households, mess with their medical decisions, potentially, the care or the lives of their children, and not expect a tidal wave and a response.
And you know what? Something else we're learning about the idea of all the words that start with a C, not cognition, not competence, consciousness. And I'm not talking, because non-speaking doesn't mean unconscious, but a lot goes on in a person's subconscious, and we've actually really recently learned a lot more about how much people feel, know, understand, hear when they're in that state. So then you talk about consent in that moment, because by the looks of things, that person can't consent to anything. So then what do we do? Then where do we go? That's a different topic, but I still think it serves the point of,
well, I will say this, we know the history of where we've gone, and we know the mistakes that we've made.
Right.
And I think that's significant, because what we don't need is to go backward. So I'm like you. I believe in science. I believe in the scientists. I believe in the doctors that have dedicated their lives to the treating of patients, the study of genetics and all these sorts of things. They have a knowledge base individually and collectively that far outweigh anything that a politician could ever produce to me that would convince me that they are not the experts and that they are not capable. Then there's the knowledge base of the parents like us, which is why it's important for us to also have these conversations, because I would tell you, a good doctor will seek out the opinion and the knowledge base of the parent to treat the child, especially a non-speaking child, because we know our children best, and because we're constantly around them, we know how they communicate. So who better to advocate for a child? Who better to make the medical decisions for a child than their parents? And I would agree with you. There are some parents that, for whatever reason, maybe they don't understand, maybe they're like not well informed, maybe they've been pumped full of misinformation. I can't say that I know all the reasons why. Not everybody's a good parent. I'm not going to say that I'm a great parent all the time. I know that I try. I know that I do my best to my capacity to serve my children, and that my goal, and I think how I see the world and impact as a grown-up, I really feel that our objective and our goal should be to create the space to preserve the things so that our children have the opportunity to try, to make mistakes,
yes,
to have a life. I've had the opportunity to have my life and make my mistakes and all that. I don't want that taken away from my children, even if they have autism, or especially because they have autism, because the world is not aware of the gifts that these autistic children can provide. And I think that would be a huge error for society as a whole. We can't single these kids out and limit them. They are limitless. And if we limit these children, we will actually be taking away from our society.
I agree. Thank you for saying that way more eloquently than I've said.
Oh, I don't know about eloquent, but yeah.
Well, it wrapped it up in a bow.
Sometimes the spirit moves me.
With the now I'm getting to the point in the day where my mom brain just starts shutting off mid-sentence. What did you just say?
Limitless versus limitless.
Oh, limit. So I think it's important. I think it's important in a lot of ways, but I can be, and we can be, right? Autism moms can be advocates. We can be informing people. We can be resources and all those things. Because to me, what I want is, I want the world, and we want the world to do a lot of things, but I want the world to work, not as hard as I'm working as an autism mom, that'd be crazy. Yeah. But I want the world to work to meet my kids where they are. And I'm going to work really hard for my child to be themselves, but also be as, involved in the world as they want to be. Mm-hmm. But I don't want that expectation to me should come from both sides. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a big piece of where we come in, mm-hmm. because we are we're both, right? Mm-hmm. We're in the world and we're also in the autism world. And to me, we've spent a lot of time asking autistic kids to integrate in the neurotypical world, mm-hmm. but I want the world to integrate as well. Big ask, but I think we get that done with information and resources and real life stories. And regardless of what anyone is saying or how they're saying it, and it's kind of funny to say no news is bad news because I don't know if I believe that, but in this case, people are talking. If nothing else, a conversation got started. And I think there's something to be said for all of that.
I agree. And I'm going to give you an example of the type of things we're talking about as far as like our hopes and dreams of things that are now. Wheelchairs, wheelchair ramps. 40 years ago or so, not a lot of wheelchair ramps. 50, 60 years ago, maybe none. Now we have wheelchair ramps, elevators, almost everything is wheelchair accessible. That is an expectation.
Yep.
Even for able body. I'm not sure that my language is appropriate, so if I'm making a mistake, please give me a little grace. But if you are a person that utilizes a wheelchair to make yourself able to do the things that all of us do, and I think that should be the expectation, we should not be in a space now because we've overcome some of these hurdles. We are capable. It is not outlandish to think we can open our minds up a little more to include autism.
Right.
I'm not quite sure exactly what that looks like, but I'm using the wheelchair as an example because 50, 60 years ago, it probably seemed insane to people that they're, I'm not going to inconvenience I'm not going to spend all that money to build a wheelchair ramp for what? For who? And then there were people that crawled up the steps.
Right.
To prove a point.
Right.
And I think this is a resurgence of that sort of thing.
Yep.
Like, in a way, we are crawling up the steps. What? Maybe our kids aren't, but we are for our children.
Absolutely, yes.
Listen, you know what? We can do this. We are capable. And this should now be an expectation of our society.
Absolutely. I think there's no reason we can't be flexible. And to me, this goes back a little bit to treating everyone as an individual. Mm-hmm. So autism, I don't know, anything. I love your wheelchair analogy. I'm just thinking, if a kiddo comes into an establishment that I own, not this gym, because this gym is made for sensory, processing issues, but let's say I'm the restaurant owner or what have you, and a child's having a hard time. Is there any reason that I can't offer headphones, something, or just go up to the parent and say, is there anything I can, is there anything I can do to help you? And to me, that's flexing in, because I don't know it's not a one size fits all, I guess is where I'm going with that. And it just takes a tiny bit of time and acknowledgement to help someone in that situation.
Well, I think that's the beauty of this podcast. And like I've said a million times, like, I hope by the time we're done, there are 1,000 of these, because I'm one person and, we need more people talking about these sorts of things. But yeah, to your point, if you're curious, ask. There are plenty of autism moms. If you see a child, for example, then you're like, maybe inside you, your response is like, I don't know. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole because I have no knowledge base for that. Maybe rather than that response, even though it makes you uncomfortable, like when you feel uncomfortable and you step against that, that's growth. And that's a positive thing. No autism parent, if you approach them in a positive way, is going to be like step off, brother. They're going to be like, okay, this person has shown me that they're being vulnerable. They're being curious, and I want to make sure that they walk away from this experience knowing more than when they started.
1,000,000%. I'm making up percentages now, but I had a mom of a neurotypical child the other day ask me, she said, I hope this isn't rude. And I'm like, okay.
Fire away.
Yeah. She's like, but my daughter, sometimes when we're out in the community, we might see someone who maybe acts differently than she does, and we're kind of seeking tactful ways to approach that or, learn. And I said, ask questions. Please ask questions. Mm-hmm. If somebody came up to me and said, oh, like, I see I don't even know what it would be, flapping his hands or something, like, what does that mean? If you come up with positive intentions, just like you said, please let me tell you, because I don't talk to a lot of people about it, Yeah. And then the next time that person sees somebody, they go, oh my gosh, look how happy that kid is. Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even more than that, maybe then they will take the opportunity to educate someone else and say, you know what, I don't know a lot about autism, but I ran into this autism mom the other day and she told me what flapping means. And that may not mean that for every child, but I just want to share that with you.
Yeah, I think that's huge. That's huge. And that's part of that. You gotta sit in the awkward probably for a little bit. I think even as autism moms, we probably did. I know I did. I didn't know how to talk to people about Corbin for the first couple of years. And then it really took a while for me to, I'm like, how do I approach this because it's going to be this really long story, but I don't want, but everybody has to sit in the awkward for a little bit for the greater good, I think.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, like we were saying earlier, don't hide your children. I think most of us have probably made this mistake on some level, like, maybe we don't have the language, we don't know what's out there or whatever, but the instant that you find out, seek out community in some sense. It doesn't matter what. And I'm hoping that people will find this podcast or their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, their teachers, their pastors, whoever. It's not important, but the important thing is to get the information out to the people that need it, even if it's something really simple as like, maybe you're not quite sure how to talk about it, but you just want them to have this information because you think they may need it and they may not. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're happy with their situation, and that is fine too, because I'm not here to tell you how to parent. But what I can tell you from my personal experience, it is like you said, the loneliness and the isolation is epic.
Yep.
And I would say, in my personal experience, I made errors. I was frustrated. I was more angry. My kids were more frustrated, more angry. If these people are constantly by themselves, always stressed out, always angry, always overwhelmed or whatever, there's no good that's going to come from that scenario. Finding community in some sense to alleviate some of that burden is some of the best stuff that I did. Yeah. And like I said, I'm not perfect and I'm still scratching. But when I started, the scratching for information, like, I felt like I couldn't find anything anywhere.
I would agree with that. And I'm glad that it's continues to, resources continue to pop up, like you said, because the word epic, great choice of word there, because it is the most, I was so social growing up. I was so, I don't know, I thrived. I was extroverted in all the ways. And then I just closed off because I didn't know what else to do. And I held resentment for a while towards some of my lifelong friends that didn't understand. Well, why would they? That's something else that I've had to, and that's been years ago now, but that I had to let go of. Like, not everybody's going to understand, and that's okay. And give them the grace to figure out how they need to figure it out. But it's these resources are hugely important, and particularly for, us moms. I don't think, I think it's very hard for somebody who hasn't personally experienced it to really comprehend that feeling.
Yeah.
And how life-changing it is, and how it's life-changing. And for a while, it felt like there were no outlets for that. And it was, yeah.
I agree with you. Just feels like you're drowning.
Oh, yeah.
Just constantly paddling water. We just like...
Well, and then I'm a terrible mom, right? Not actually terrible.
No, but that's what your mind is saying.
Yes. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. In my head, I was going to have a neurotypical son, and then I was going to go back to work, and then everything was going to be normal, right? And it was this whirlwind of so much unexpected.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head there. I have the same thought, and I think that's where some of the grief comes in, because nobody prepares you for this. Like, or for instance, like, I don't know how to speak about this in a way that maybe is a great way to put it, but like, in a way, you were better off than me because you knew earlier.
Oh, I see.
So like right out the gate, you're like, okay, there's something happening. I've been to Riley, something else is happening. I've been to genetic testing. I had my child. Everything seemed normal, until he was about 2.5, three and a half. And then all of a sudden he had a language regression. And then, because everything else was fine. Like, all the other milestones, he was just blasting past.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, his speech wasn't quite where they wanted it, and then we just went backward. And then he was having, like, self-injurious behavior and all these different things. And so I really was thrown for a loop because I had already gone back to work.
Right. And
then I had to take myself out again. And then I had 2 other kids that then they also were diagnosed with autism. And then my world imploded. And I was like, oh my God, like,
yeah,
okay. And so I think I was like pretty decent about it, but I'm like, right, now I have this issue. Now I have these 3 kids that they need services. Life is a little different. Obviously, everybody evaporated.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Everybody evaporated. Like, it's like my old life died. Mm-hmm. That's basically like my old life died, and I'm a new person.
No
and
preparation.
The gray, I don't know if you can see, but the gray is a reflection of the stress. Maybe, some of it's genetic as well. But I'm just saying, like, the amount of gray. And I'm not even, I feel like I earned it. It's like my tiger stripes,
I love that.
All that. Because I'm like, no, like, I legitimately earned that. And the amount of stress that a person has to endure, I can't even describe it. So I kind of feel like I'm wearing my battle scars on my head.
I love that. They're beautiful, by the way.
Well, thanks. I mean, and I will say, I also lost quite a bit of my hair.
Oh, I did too.
I'm sure about the stress, and my hair's just like, I thought I used to have like decent hair, and now I'm just like, I don't know what happened. I can't get it to grow back. So that's why it's always up in the clip, because like, I'm not quite bald in parts, but like seriously thinning, and I think it's probably the stress.
Probably.
So anyway, like, I'll deal with it later at some point. Like, maybe my hair may eventually decide to grow. But for now, yeah, I'm just like wearing my war stripes on my hair and rolling with it because I feel like I survived. My kids survived.
Right. And you hit on 2 key points that I'm passionate about. One is grief, the concept of grief, and feeling grief through this process of learning your child has a disability, and then how does that look? I truly, as a adult educated woman in my 30s, didn't realize until probably 2 years ago that you could feel grief and qualify it as grief for any reason other than death. I truly thought, well, this is ridiculous. Why do I feel this way? Nobody died.
Right.
Oh, my feeling is my feeling regardless of what happened. And that was hugely helpful for me, to kind of lean into grieving the life that I had envisioned for myself and my children and all of that.
I think that's what's dangerous about this conversation, not our conversation, but this like national conversation that I do think is morphing into a world conversation. You know, everybody's watching us right now. I'm watching how we're behaving and watching our reactions to things. I'm not saying that they're going to do the same things, but people are very intent. They're like, America has always been a standard.
Right, right.
We've been a standard for things. And a lot of that has had to do with human justice. And these things that are swirling right now that are contrary to those type of things that we historically have stood for are confusing everyone, including ourselves.
Yes. Confusing because as individuals, we're our own little countries looking at everything, trying to make the best decisions. And we look to the American people, American country to be that example.
I think I'm just one person. You tell me what you think. I think for me, like patriotism or what we stand for, like my family's been here for a long time. I have certain feelings about what I think it means to be an American and what I think it means to pass my American citizenship onto my children and what it means to belong to a country, to stand for something and what we should stand for. And I'm having a lot of conflictions right now, especially now that my children are one of these populations, that there are certain people that are other Americans, like also part of my nation, that there seems to be a rift in who's American, who deserves to be American, who has the right to be American,
right?
Who has the right to services, who are American, who has the right to be on certain soil, how that is determined. I never thought I would ever see some of this stuff in my lifetime, and now it is directly affecting my children. My twins were born in South Africa.
That's cool.
I didn't tell you that, but yeah, we've got an interesting family story.
Yeah.
The amount of work that I had to do to prove that not only was I an American citizen that had extreme ties to the U.S. in order to pass my citizenship onto my children was extensive, to say the least.
Wow.
Extensive. So I fought so hard to make sure that my children were American, born on foreign soil, to have an American passport because I thought that meant something. And I thought that they would have certain services and certain rights because they were American, because I believed in what I thought America was.
And you're not speaking to that as a privilege. You're speaking to that as
a right.
A right. Exactly. And there's a huge difference in my opinion, and maybe more so as a mindset than anything else.
Oh, it's definitely a mindset.
Yeah.
And I think arguments can be made all over the board. Look, I'm not trying to tell people what to believe. I'm just saying that was my personal story. I felt like, hey, my family's been here for a long time. And I will say this, like, if you're not indigenous, you're an immigrant. Flat out.
Oh.
Flat out.
You are speaking my language. We're all immigrants.
I'm just saying, hey, we've had Africans here who are not African American, black, however you want to put it, and they are the best ones to have that conversation, right? Like, I don't need to be the one to use the vernacular, and if my vernacular is wrong, I apologize. But I'm just saying, like, we've had people that were of African descent that were slaves that participated in the Revolutionary War, that participated in the Civil War, that participated in, World War I, World War II, that came back to this country and were treated like crap.
Yeah.
There's things all over the place.
Do we have 10 more hours? Because
I know, I'm thumping my drum a bit, but I'm just there are things that are important because they stand for something, and they were supposed, like in the past, stood for something. And there was a reason why. There was a very firm reason why. And if we no longer have that, if we don't have that compass, who are we? Like, why did I fight so hard to pass my American citizenship on to my children if the same people that were put in power to protect these rights are going to strip my children from these rights?
Right.
Who are you to do that?
I like the way you, the utilization of compass there, because that's exactly right. And it feels very unpredictable, and well, it's scary, right? You lose a safety net, a certain
of course.
safety net. And it is your compass. I love that, because there were certain things you could count on, right? There were certain things that you knew, because you were an American, you could get, or because you're whatever that looks like. And that doesn't feel, at least to me, super safe right now. Which is scary. And also, I'm sure, as any parent, right? We aren't going to be here forever. So it's scary for any parent. But then it's also especially scary for special needs parents. Because I'm not going to be here forever. And I'm very grateful that my son has 4 older sisters, because they will protect him mightily. And one younger one, who debatably will protect him. But everybody needs that safety net. Everybody does. In my head, I'm picturing like a Maslow triangle, right? And especially, at least in my opinion, this community needs to feel that, because it's trying enough as it is, and we need to be able to count on some things.
I think that it was never a thing. I don't ever remember any American that I ever came across that felt terror within the US borders. Not fear, terror. And that is a problem, because you cannot have a populace that is afraid and have there be peace. So there's lots of things going on. I'm very concerned for my children, not just for my children, but for all these other people. But as a parent, as a citizen, we have come into uncharted waters, and it's very disconcerting.
You qualify yourself as a humanist, and I think that's I don't know, maybe where we all should be foundationally. But one thing that, as I'm listening to you tell your story, and then the thoughts that are coming to my mind, not once, okay, I think I probably did say RFK's name, but the point is, not once did we talk about political parties. Not once did we talk about, a president or Democrats versus Republicans. We talked about human rights.
Yeah.
And we talked about patriotism and being an American. Those things know no party.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, we got a little American out there, and she's like pumping her right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think that's important, because that was all organic. None of that was intentional. It was just what is truly important coming from someone who is thinking human first. I think that's so impactful.
Yeah.
That's Corby.
Well, I think we've got enough here.
You think?
No, we got a lot. We got a lot. And I think, if you were willing to come back, we can probably talk more.
Let's do it again. This is fun.
Okay. Well, I'm enjoying myself. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to say about We Rock the Spectrum?
Oh, sure. We Rock the Spectrum is a really fun gym for all kids, and it's a really safe space for the entire community. And yeah, I guess I went off on several tangents there, but I'm an autism mom as much as I am a business owner. So please come to the gym, check it out.
All right. Thanks. We appreciate you guys.
Tabitha.
We'll see you later.
We are at a pivotal point in American history. We do not have the luxury to remain silent. Programs are disappearing every day. We hope that this podcast raises awareness and sparks a sense of advocacy in you. We all can make a difference. The important thing is to start. See you next time.